We still haven't heard from Mr. Sego.
Yeah, I see that he's in the participants room, and he's walking right up to his desk now.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and entertain. This is an information item on wetland mitigation opportunities for the port. And Jim, you want to go ahead and introduce Steve on this?
Sure. Yeah. So Steve and I have been talking for some time, and his interest in a piece of property that is currently leased by the port from DNR. Steve has some big plans, not just with this property, but a lot of properties around this area to do some wetland improvements, some environmental improvements, not just to help the area, but also to help with mitigation that the Navy needs as well. So Steve approached me on this one, and he'll get into the fact of why this one is important to his project and why it would benefit what he's trying to do. So
where's
Steve, I'll go ahead and let you.
Jim, where's the property we're talking about?
This is a piece of property near the Port Orchard Marina. The best way is it's near the boat launch, but we're kind of right behind the 7-Eleven property there.
Okay. All right, Steve, are you with us?
I'm there. Thank you, Commissioner Bozeman and commissioners and Jim Rothland. So yeah, I'm at my desk, which happens to be in Florida right now. So I wish it was more frequently here, but yeah, I just got off the phone a little while ago. So listen, I want to ask to consider maybe in a month or so to come back and be on the agenda with a more thorough discussion of this project and share with you the breadth of what we're up to. And as Jim described, it's an umbrella mitigation bank project that I've been working on for 7 years, and it's not really a quote Navy mitigation bank. They're a primary user, but it's to support anybody who has a permitted unavoidable impact 404 permit that they need offsite mitigation for. And per the federal rule and the guidance from the Corps and Ecology and all the folks involved as stakeholders in that process, they can use offsite mitigation from a mitigation bank, or they're actually referred to a mitigation bank if it's been permitted and they're in the service area. So with that said, I've been aggregating and identifying and my staff over the last years, and then in the last year very intently going through and considering and examining and assessing sites. And through that process, we have properties from Blackjack Creek and South Kitsap all the way to Port Gamble and North Kitsap in about 12 different watersheds. And we consider the parcels that we're talking about tonight, we call them Blackjack Creek because they aren't part of there isn't a proximal stream, but the objective is to identify sites that provide for potential, what we call ecological lift. And what that means is by fixing them, by restoring function, by removing fill and restoring beaches and habitat and streams, it's a different strategy, but the same outcome. You're creating a quantifiable ecological lift. And at these sites, there's 3 of them that the DNR has leases to both, or to Kitsap Bank and then to 2 public entities, the Port of Bremerton at the site that we're talking about tonight, and also to the city of Port Orchard, which is where the parking area in front of the marina is along the beach there. So the proposal was, the discussion was, we'd like to include those 3 DNR lease sites in our what's called mitigation bank prospectus. And think of a prospectus as an initial business plan. We're making the case for why there's need, what we're going to do with this project, and we have to have some certainty of site control, or the people who help permit us don't want to waste their time. So we've been going through and either acquiring properties or purchasing or leasing or making arrangements and agreements with different public entities to include their properties. In this case, what we're proposing to do is ask you, the DNR has given me written permission to include those 3 parcels that are on the shoreline there as part of this project. In fact, they're very supportive. They think they could like to do more of this, they said, but it depends upon the underlying leaseholders agreeing to let us do that. And what that means is, should we succeed in our prospectus process, and should the Port Orchard master plan that is currently in process with the Community Event Center and the other components, the Kitsap Bank and the other piece, come together, that would trigger the ability for those properties to be manipulated differently on the fee simple and the public part, the DNR part, so that we could then move forward with the project. If that weren't to happen, if the master plan didn't come together, then it really wouldn't make sense for us to try to fit a shoreline restoration around Kitsap Bank's building still being there on DNR property. It's not going to work. So, and so the question is, would you first agree that we could include your leased property, that is that old State Ferry dock, that's this pier sitting out there in front of the 7-Eleven there, as part of our process to begin the discussion for review, with the stipulation that we would be able to use that or take over, be assigned a lease value from you that you have with the DNR should the master plan be approved, and we could move forward with the design and the restoration process. So we're not asking for some kind of a abandonment of your lease rights or any kind of official transfer, just the ability that with the stipulations I've described, including that the mitigation credit that we could generate from our project would be made available to the port for purchase for their needs. So in other words, we'd be spending the money to do all the restoration and credit generation on the construction and permitting side. And in return, as you might have needs for your breakwater project or other projects, you'd be able to use the mitigation bank for your needs as well.
I think, Steve, that's the thing most that I'm concerned about is that we do have access to those mitigation credits if we need them for our Port Orchard project.
Yeah. And just so you know, we have multiple users that are part of wanting to use this bank, including the Navy, including WashDOT, including other entities, public and private. And in some cases, we, based upon these kind of arrangements, we'll put together what's called a reservation agreement that provides specific guarantees of credit access for your needs over the years ahead. And there's a window that after some point, if you don't use them, after so many years, then somebody else can use them.
We have to pay for them?
You do, because we're paying for the heavy lifting, which is the construction and the conversion of, in other words, is just because we take over the lease doesn't mean we get mitigation credits. We then have to spend a year and a half designing, and permitting the project, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, in this case, just to give you a sense of kind of scale, this is about a $40 to $50 million project overall in terms of the front side investment from North Kitsap to Mason County.
Interesting. Any questions from commissioners? Jim, what was your plan on bringing this forward? Oh, go ahead, Axel.
Well, yeah, just a comment. Steve, how you doing? Great to see you here tonight. And we haven't seen you guys around. So, but I just so respect what Steve's process is and how he goes about with the mitigation banks that he operates, and I just have a lot of respect for the process. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions and stuff as this potentially moves forward. And I don't think I need to ask him tonight. Thanks.
And could I just confirm? It's important to understand that we're not asking for the gifting of anything, or there's a lease that you have, you pay that lease. If it becomes clear that you don't need that property for your current lease and we can assume the lease, we still have to pay for it. We pay the DNR, but we would then convert that to mitigation that would support both the restoration of the shoreline, which is incredibly valuable to the master plan project. So there's a huge amount of money that won't necessarily be required to provide that amenity on the shoreline, recreational, environmental benefit, but also the value of the mitigation credits that the value of a mitigation credit is, and I don't know on your team if anybody's done much in the way of offsite mitigation for your projects. I'm sure they have. If you use what we call permittee responsible, so you have a breakwater, you've got some property, you're going to create ecological lift, you're going to get a permit to do that, you're going to spend the money to do all that and then construct it and convert it and make it acceptable for the regulatory permitters. you still have an ongoing liability. You have performance standards, and if something goes wrong and it doesn't function or perform the way you proposed it, you're liable to make sure it does. That's how you got your mitigation. A mitigation bank, you purchase the credits, and the day you apply them to your permit, you never think about them again. There's no connection to our work, and we're the ones that are the liable party, and that's a very valuable piece of this process.
Yeah, and he's talking about functional wetlands in perpetuity is what the leases or the permits like to say, which means you're maintaining that thing forever. So it's nice when somebody else has that responsibility.
What about our property down by the fence property? Is that included in this?
Which
Down by
property?
That's a separate but similar project.
You know,
I mean, that's a different project.
Yeah.
Well, Kerry, I have been interested in that property too. I've had some discussions. I just didn't know enough yet about where that was. And there's an adjacent property owner I've talked to as well. In fact, I purchased some property from them separately elsewhere. So I just so you know, we have property that we've acquired at Ross Creek on the shoreline, as well all the way up to Highway 16, which is where the swim deck is. So properties that we look for properties that combine near shore, shoreline, what we call marine functions, which is, you know, the tidelands and the shorelines with the riparian stream systems and freshwater as one big system. And so that's why these shoreline pieces are an important part of that entire spectrum of ecological function for, you know, a regional ecosystem. So your properties out there, I know you're talking about, are of interest. We just haven't really had any discussions about that.
Well, as long as I'm supporting moving forward with this, as long as we've got access to credits if we need them for our project at the marina.
So, Commissioner, yeah, you asked why we brought him here today. I think it was just wanted you guys to start thinking about this. What he's really asking us to do is relinquish the rights to that property. The purpose, from what I can see, looking back historically, of why we have it was specifically for future mitigation. So what Steve's really proposing here is he's saying we can take over that project for you and use their expertise to have it done rather than us do it. Obviously, there'll be a price to pay at the other end, but there's a huge release of responsibility there as well if somebody else is doing it. So, and I think
they're doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And I think, Steve, eventually you're going to need something in writing or.
Well, all I need at this point is a letter. I have it from the city and I have it from Kitsap Bank saying we agree to let you use the lease properties with the DNR parcel number XYZ for the purposes of the first step in your mitigation bank process, which is a prospectus that we're going to submit in a month to the agencies, and that'll become a part of a public notice process. And Jim, just to make clear too, we're not asking to relinquish anything until such time as there's certainty that we are going to be permitted. You know, you aren't going to give it up unless we are going to be able to perform.
Right.
And it's important to know too is, again, this is a nuance of permitting responsible versus mitigation banking. If you do something, you might get one. If we do something, we might get two or three. And what I mean by that is the idea of a mitigation bank has more conversion value to actual permits because of the incredible breadth of obligations, financial assurances, advanced mitigation, they call it. So we do something that creates more value than you could as well.
Yeah, that's true. In a previous port, we did that, and we created a 40-acre mitigation bank just for that purpose. If the studies will show you that if you try to create small pockets of mitigation, you're going to get less credits because it has less likelihood of working correctly. So the more he can get together, the more credits he can accrue.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim, this was an information item tonight. What's your plan moving forward here, Jim?
I just, as long as I can hear from you that you're good, I'll put a letter together for Steve and just let him know that, you know, we're okay with moving forward up to this point, so.
We need to put that on the next agenda as an item, or
No,
just do it?
if I just hear it from you guys, I'll go ahead and put the letter together.
Commissioners, are you good with that?
But I got one question, if I can. Carrie,
Yes.
one question. I just want to back it up a little bit. Maybe Jim's got the answer. So we currently have a DNR lease, and would Steve's company be assuming that DNR lease?
Yes. They would assume it and they would have
And
control.
in
of the
return,
property.
we would get mitigation credits.
We'd have to.
And they would be responsible for the DNR.
I mean,
lease.
that's the idea, correct?
And we'd have a contract.
And in return, we get mitigation credits.
Yeah, and we at the time of the final agreement to relinquish your lease, there'd be language that stipulates the provision of mitigation credits for your needs.
So this letter is.
And you would assume the lease.
Correct.
Gary, you got any comments?
Just one thing, Jim, would you just double check for me on that DNR lease if there's any upland parking areas that are
Okay.
encompassed in that
Mhm.
that boundary for me? You know what Steve offers. This is something that better left to the experts for sure, and Steve is an expert, so I'm on board with it. But I just want to make sure that if we have to define the area, that we exclude any parking that
Yeah.
might be associated with it.
That's a good comment. I agree with that. Okay, well, I
Be
guess.
nice to see a diagram.
Yeah, and I'll just again, I'd like to come back in a month or so and give you an update on the full meal deal, if you will. It's pretty impressive in terms of we're talking thousands of acres from the Hood Canal to the Puget Sound. But I also would tell you that I came to you previously and asked for a right of is it right of first refusal? Is that correct terminology, Jim? On the
A right of first offer.
right of first offer, and I would like to move forward in the next step to come back specifically and explore if that property ever is surplus, what the timeline might be, so we can include it in this project as well.
Okay.
Great.
I think we all agreed. We'll, Jim, you can move forward with this letter.
Okay.
I'd like to see a copy. I'm sure we'd all like to see a copy of it. Okay.
Okay.
Steve, thank you. Have you got any other last comments before you go back on the beach?
I just finished an hour-long Roxy board meeting, so my brain's a little melted right now. But I'm actually going to spend some time with my son, who's been very patient with me today as I landed off an airplane and went to work. So thank you for your time. Great to see you all. I'm looking forward to the time when we're back meeting up at the port. So
did you decide what kind of popcorn you're going to sell at the next movie? Is that what you do? Or
yeah, we actually count them out and make sure we have exactly the right amount.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
guys. Take care. See you. Okay.